you know, having killed innocent people. Sorry, some dude was just staring at me, and I feel a need to always stare back when they do that. I always see it as a challenge. That's a funny thing. It's sort of like a domination thing. Or not, yeah, no, dominance. I'm not a fan when people, you know, take rude actions to sort of, you know, try and affect you. Like, for example, if you're driving slowly past someone and you sort of like stop and then just stare at them, where I come from, my urge was to get out of the car and smash his window. Because it's sort of like, who are you to sit there and then stare at me? And that's a funny thing with me personally, is that in my childhood, like, it was all about that. If someone did that, you know, in the time when I was growing up, that would have been the response. Back in the early 2000s, I would have just got out. Like, not me, because in the early 2000s I was like 12, but an adult male up in Rocky would have just got out of the car and had a go at him and tried to go him. Because it's like, who are you? Like, especially with another man, it's like, who are you to sit there and stare at me? And it's like, a lot of times, these are what I mean by unconscious behaviours. That if someone stops and stares at me, I feel a need to attack them, because that is what was conditioned into me from my environment. Because when I would stop and stare at people, that is what they would do to me. And that's how it works. So it's sort of like, it's very important to be able to do that, because it's very hard, because it's an instant response, to be able to catch yourself in it. Usually, like, it takes a fair bit to be able to catch yourself just after you've done it. But if you think about it in your own life, like, how many times do people do things? Like, if someone flips you off, the instant reaction is to then become aggressive and have a go at them and flip them off. And it's sort of like, this is what I mean by these unconscious behaviours, is that because our subconscious mind moves so much quicker than our conscious mind, we're sort of reactionary or reacting far quicker than we actually even understand what's happening. Like, evidently old mate heard me recording this and then was being nosy and sort of had some judgmental opinions about why I'm sitting here parked in a national park recording this video. That's why I felt a need to attack him, is because who the fuck is he to act like that? Like, by all means, act like that and we can do mutual combat. That's always my answer. It's not the right answer, but that's always the urge that I get, that I have to, and that's why I don't really react, is because I've learned that it's not good to react. Because if I jump out of the car and then start having a go at him, and then I get my heat up, and then I punch through his window and break his window and start threatening to kill him, like, it's only going to end up with me going to jail. You know what I mean? So what's the point of becoming reactive? But it's like the impulsive urge to do that, because of the learnt behaviours and sort of the conditioned behaviours, is hard to fight. So whenever I feel myself sort of getting that response to become aggressive, to where someone's taking an action that makes me feel like I need to respond how people responded to me as a child and as an adolescent, I always just, like, force myself to remain, like I force myself not to react. Like, unless they come up and they try and make a point of it and try and interrupt me, like, no matter what I feel, I suppress it. Because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to overreact and be an idiot, and then I'm just going to get myself in trouble, with the cops, or I'm going to start an altercation. Many men, especially in Australia, don't understand how to do that, and then they get emotional. And it's like, the only reason I can do that is because my whole life, that is how people treat me. Like, they judge me. They try to make a point and make me feel less than. Like, that's why I don't react. It's because it's just, it's not that I expect it, but it's just, in my life, that has always been it. When I am being who I am, people feel a need to make a point to make me feel less than. And when you're slowly driving past someone and then you stop and you stare at them and make a point to stare at them, what are you doing? Like, I know what he's doing. He's trying to make a point to judge me. Like, do you get it? Like, what I'm doing in my life has nothing fucking to do with him. So he should just drive on by and not care. But because I don't comply to what people expect, and I'm doing what I'm doing, they feel a need to make a point to make me notice that what I am doing is not acceptable in their eyes. And that's a funny thing. That's why I feel the need to, and the urge to attack them, is because that is what he was trying to do. Many men have tried to do it to me my whole life. They always do. And it doesn't bother me because, like, the thing is just, when whatever anyone does to you, okay, this is a key thing to understand, and it's very important in self-validation, is that just remember, whatever anyone does to you, if they judge you or try to make you feel insecure about something, it's because they feel insecure about it. That's why they're trying to make a point. That's why they feel a need to sort of like either attack you, mentally, physically, or provoke you to show you that you're different. The reason they do that is because they feel insecure about themselves, because they cannot do that. Like, for example, with the content I produce, the people that say stupid things to me and say negative comments, like, the funniest thing is in every one of their comments, like, the way they comment and what they try and call me out for, they are taking the exact same action that they're trying to call me out for. And it's so funny. Like, for example, the majority of people that post negative comments on, videos on social media, they don't actually post their own content on social media. So it's sort of like, who are you to talk? And that's a funny thing, is that, especially with me, my biggest fears always revolved around, I feared the top people attacking me. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's attacking me for the content I produce, I always feared that it would be someone who produces really, really high quality content, because that makes me feel insecure. Like, if someone who is far better than me attacks me, because, you know what I mean? But it's always the ones low or towards the bottom that are the ones trying to attack, because they feel insecure, because they may want to do it, or because they know they cannot do it. So, like, think about that next time, especially if you ever get an urge to write negative content, like like comments on posts and things like that, is that just realize whatever you're about to write, as soon as you write it, you're taking that action. So, like, for example, like, for me, it's not a negative comment that I wrote, but essentially, someone did a video on Australia and they used an American person as their reference that lived in America that didn't understand anything about Australia and missed out the majority of the good Australian history and was trying to say this is what Australia is. And it's like, you know what I mean? I told him that, mate, I would have been, referencing an Australian channel with someone in country because that would have gotten the better result. But as soon as I've said that, like, did I research, old mate? Like, do you sort of get it? Like, and it's a funny realization because it's sort of like whenever someone does something to you that sort of is designed to make you either feel insecure or feel less than, in the moment that they do it, like, whatever they accuse you of, if someone calls you ugly, it's because they think they're ugly. Like, do you get it? But we all have this thing in our head from school that we think it's going to be the beautiful, popular people that are going to call us ugly. But as soon as they call you ugly, their personality is ugly. Like, do you get it? And that's a funny thing, is that, like, I've come to realize, and it's hard, especially when it's an emotional provocation, when someone's trying to get an emotional response out of you, because it's so quick, and if we give in and let the emotions take over, what will happen is we sort of become less and less logical. So, like, if you ever had a debate or something with someone and then they start saying, stupid things to trigger you, and then you become, heated, and then you sort of lose your temper and you lose control and you start saying things that don't make sense to try and win the argument. And it's like, the argument never really mattered, but they got under your skin and they caused that emotional response, and then you sort of started to deteriorate and lose control of your ability to, make a logical case. Because trust me, like, I am an avid arguer. I really enjoy debating. And my whole strategy was always to get someone emotionally unstable. Because once I get them emotionally unstable, they can't see how I'm boxing them in and using manipulative strategies to make them basically look like a fool. Like, a big thing I always do is not so much in an argument, but when I want to make a point to someone, I'll always ask them a question I know the exact answer to. And then I give them the opportunity to try and tell me what it is. Like, do you get it? They don't know that I know the answer to it. I'll always lead them to believe that I don't know anything on the topic, and then I let them dig their own grave, and then basically I tell them what it is, and usually they look and feel stupid because of it. Like, that's the thing I've realized, is especially when it comes to, like, feeling a need, like, we feel this need to protect ourselves and people have to earn our trust. I give my trust away freely to people because I've come to realize that if you freely trust people, they will always show you exactly who they are. Like, you don't have to guess. Like, all you have to do is watch their actions. They can't help themselves. And especially if you never draw attention when you notice people doing things that, for me, it's if I notice that people aren't respecting what I'm saying, if I notice people aren't listening to what I'm saying and I know I'm right, and what they're saying is illogical, I won't tell them that what they're saying is illogical. I'll let them think that they're winning, up until the point that I pull the rug out from under them. And it's a very funny thing, because they don't see it coming, and it's always a shock and a surprise. And it's sort of like, this has always been my strategy in life, especially in winning arguments, is sort of like, I create a false belief in you that I'm stupid, up until the point that I'm ready to pull the rug out from underneath you. Because for me, especially when growing up, like, arguing and winning arguments and proving how smart you were really important things. Because that's how society and culture and all of that is. Which is so funny. Because it's irrelevant if you're right or wrong. Like, it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're right, if you're wrong, if you're a good person, if you're a bad person, if you're honest, if you lie, cheat, or steal, it doesn't really matter. If you lie, cheat, and steal, and I feel less than, and I have low self-worth, and like, I don't validate my internal thoughts and beliefs and emotions and feelings, and I validate them through you, it doesn't matter how bad of a person you are. Like, this is why girls will usually be in relationships with these, men that cheat, or these men that are abusive or toxic, you know what I mean? Or even men are in relationships with toxic women and stuff like that. I've always put myself in those positions. Mine was always, I let girls emotionally manipulate me. But the funniest thing is like they did damage to my mental, to my psychological construct. Like, they fucked with my head. But the thing was, they couldn't fuck with my emotions, because I never understood my emotions. So, like, if a girl tried to emotionally manipulate me, like, when I was younger, emotions just made me angry because they confused me. So it's like, yeah, you can emotionally manipulate me, but it's sort of like I'm just going to get confused and angry, and I won't understand what's happening, and I'll just lose my shit. Like, that's a funny thing, is like, I always would let them believe that they were doing it, but it's like, I always put myself in these toxic situations, and even though the toxic situations weren't really hurting me, they were still hurting my self-worth. They were still hurting, my view of who I was. And that's an important aspect to remember about self-validation, is that if we're accepting, like, lower standards, if we're valuing people above ourselves, okay, and we don't understand how to root out those external beliefs, like, after, some long-term relationships of being emotionally abused and manipulated, like, I had to work through so much just toxic shit that was in my head. You know what I mean? Like, I had to figure out and work through all these negative beliefs that I had picked up about myself and who I was. Like, it takes years. But it's sort of like, once you get through it, and once you understand, like, what are my beliefs and what are other people's beliefs, and the easiest way is you'll internally know what is your belief and what is not your belief. because your beliefs make you feel good about yourself. Your beliefs make you feel happy about yourself. Now, we're not talking about ego, where I think I'm happy, where I think I'm a good person. No, the things that actually make you feel happy. And this is why using meditation is very important, especially doing like meditation and mindfulness, where we're sitting there, just a calm, meditative state and just sort of working through and letting our emotions and feeling our emotions. Because, like, the only way to sort of identify if a belief is really yours or is something that has been implanted in your mind, like, it's like you've got to sit in it and ask yourself, is this me? Is this who I want to be? For me, like exes, you know, manipulative girlfriends that I had made me believe that I was a highly manipulative person, that I was someone that manipulated, and there's always truth in what people say. Like, that's the funny thing. There's always truth in it. So if someone calls you, for example, if someone calls me ugly, yeah, I'm ugly. And like, like, that would be narcissistic of me to think I'm attractive to everyone. Of course I'm going to be ugly to some people. Like, does it really matter? Like, that's a funny thing. So it's like, we got to understand the difference between the ego and the subconscious, because essentially our ego is just our conscious mind, and our ego always wants to think, that we are the best, that we are. And if you want to know a narcissistic person, that's just someone who is in their ego, who is trying to win at all costs, who has a